What's up, y'all? Spare Cat. Today, what I want to talk about is stippling and undercuts. Having stippling and undercuts on your firearm, explaining what they are and the benefits that they give you. So, the first thing we're going to look at is a Glock 43. And I'll tell you, let's see. I don't know if you can notice, I don't have a Glock 43 that is, factory in order to compare it to. But you can see there is a clear, it's obvious at how this little notch is right here. And it'll look like that the trigger guard is really thin in that one spot. But part of that, if you look closely, there's actually looks kind of like a shadow right in this area, but it's really not. What makes it look so thin is the fact that it's kind of beveled around the edges of the trigger guard right here, and it makes it look slimmer than it really is. But what an undercut does for you, real quick, we're going to take a look at a gun. I've got one here that doesn't have an undercut. This is Smith & Wesson M&P 9mm. All right, look at right here, the bottom of the trigger guard where it kind of rolls into the front strap of the grip, and the way my hand fits here. All right, the shape of this top finger that's going to go up against the bottom of the trigger guard in this groove is not. There's no way that every firearm can fit every person perfectly. Everybody's got different size hands, but not only the fit, but being able to get a higher purchase on the firearm. And what I mean by that is being able to get your fingers and the webbing of your hand up high, as close to the bore axis as you can get it. What that does is when you have the firearm recoil, whenever that slide goes back and it recoils, instead of having a large mass that is high over the top of your hand, recoiling up here, it brings it closer down and closer to the same level as the structure in your arm. And that helps your entire skeletal system and all your muscles absorb that recoil directly instead of having it up here on top of everything and having your grip down here. What that does is it gives you more muzzle flip, muzzle rise. So by having a higher purchase, you get more of a direct push from the firearm in to your wrist and your arm and so on and so forth, all the way into your shoulder and all these muscles here, and it just helps you control recoil better. And as you can see, that is the way that an M&P comes. All right, this is M&P with an undercut. So that allows me to get, first off, it fits my top finger better, and it allows me to get a higher purchase on the gun. Also, when it comes to having control of a firearm and mitigating the recoil of a firearm, the more contact that your hand has with the surfaces of that grip, the more pressure you're applying to those surfaces because you've got more contact. And with that, you're going to have more control over that recoil. So look at the differences between these two. So it makes for a much more comfortable grip, and it actually slides, it shifts your fingers higher up. So if you're shooting something like a Glock 19, this is a compact M&P, which is comparable to a Glock 19. If you're shooting something where normally you'd have fingers kind of hanging off, it just shifts your hands up a little bit further and gives you a little bit better purchase, just like this Glock 42, for example. It's 43, excuse me. So normally with huge hands like this, I'd barely be able to get a grip on this. You know, this is such a small gun, but my finger fitting a little further up into that trigger guard, I get a little bit more of a purchase. And when the magazine inserted, I get a full 2 fingers instead of just 1 and a piece of a finger. It's not that expensive. It is something that I offer, something that I can do for you guys for sure. But I think it makes a big difference, especially if you're going to carry a firearm all the time. If you're going to shoot a lot, those little discomforts of not having that perfect fit with that finger, it really doesn't matter if you're never going to use the gun. If you've got a safe queen, it's not very useful to you. But if you got a gun that you train to fight with, and you hope you never have to fight with it, but if you ever do have to fight with it, you want to be prepared. That's going to require a lot of training, a lot of time, a lot of hours, draw strokes, a lot of rounds sitting down the range with that firearm. And when you start spending that much time with the gun, that little bit of comfort does help. And then when you get into trying to shoot more rapidly and still keep rounds on target, having that higher purchase, and all that extra contact with the grip, having your hand just fit so much better, it really does help with mitigating recoil. And that's one thing you got to be able to control recoil the best you can if you want to be able to shoot faster. And let's be honest, you can go to the range, you can train. If you're not training to shoot as fast as you can while maintaining accuracy, then you're not getting accurate training. Because in that situation, that life or death situation where you discharge your firearm, you're going to be shooting as fast as you can. You're going to be scared. You're going to be squeezing rounds off. And you need to train that way. And when you start training that way, you're going to notice that you don't have time, nearly as much time, to let those sights fall back down, line them back up, and get that perfect shot off. It's not going to happen. So you need to do everything you can to have as much control over that firearm in that situation. Next thing we'll talk about is the stippling. Real quick, we'll look at, I don't know if anyone's ever had their hands on, this is the stippling that, I don't necessarily call it stippling. It's a texture that comes on an M&P. It's really rough sandpaper type texture, and it gives you very good grip, but that's only going to help you drastically when your hands are dry. When you get nervous, they're going to sweat. Okay, when it's summertime in South Georgia and it's hot as can be, you're going to be sweating. God forbid you get injured, or there's another injured person that you've tended to, and you've got blood on your hands. What happens when you have a slippery substance like blood or mud or sweat in between your hand and the grip of a gun? What happens is when you apply that pressure, or that slippery substance that's in between your hand and the gun has to go somewhere. And if there's nowhere for it to go, it's just going to cause slip. But with stippling, and this is not a perfect example, because if I wanted maximum effectiveness, I would stipple all these. I wouldn't leave any spaces in between. This is just something, a gun of mine I was using to kind of practice. And you see where it's kind of jacked up right there is where I've sanded on it. I've started working on an undercut for this gun as well, and I'm not quite finished with it. But other than that, instead of having this, which is a raised stippling, it's raised from the surface of the gun, this is something that is kind of sunk down into the polymer. So what happens when you have a stipple gun, and you squeeze tight on it with some type of slippery lubricant, whether it's mud, that red clay. Blood is very slippery, and sweaty hands. What happens when you squeeze it and you apply that pressure, and that substance tries to find a place to go to, because you're applying pressure on it. That's force, and force is going to cause stuff to move. And normally it would just roll across the surface of a smooth surface. But with that stippling, what it does is it has a place to kind of go. And it will sink down into these little cavities. And when it sinks down into these little cavities, the top portion of that stippling makes contact again with your hand. And it makes for a better grip. So stippling can be very important when it comes to maintaining control of your firearm as well. And there's really nothing that does, there's nothing, no firearm I've seen from the factory that gives you that same effect. If you guys see this and you got a way to contact me on Facebook or through my YouTube channel, and you want to know more, I've got more pictures of work that I've done as far as stippling. That gives you, instead of having all these spaces that aren't stippled, I've got some actual examples where the entire grip is stippled. You just hit me up and you'll be able to see those examples. If anybody's interested in having any of these things done, just let me know. I'll be glad to get you hooked up. Thanks for watching. Check it out.